They can be used in the name of aggression. The door should be unsealed. Now, instead of being subjected to threats, we can now send an equally threatening message to Mobius. And that message is science. Deliver this message, and Big Mountain shall be freed from Mobius's reign of terror. You can go now. That's your cue.
Having completed all of the quests within the Big MT and discovering every location but one, we make our way to the Forbidden Zone, where Dr. Mobius waits for us. It has been a long and difficult journey, but we're finally here at the end of Old World Blues. As we approach the Forbidden Zone, we find a large army of Robo Scorpions waiting for us. But using some low-yield mini-nukes, it is not much of a problem. We finish up the stragglers with a shotgun and then find the front door to the X-42 Robo Warfare facility.
Please put on your goggles and take your rad-X now. The X-42 giant Robo Scorpion is alive! Awaken, my pet! Initiate your search and destroy protocol in the name of all that is Mobius!
As we enter Dr. Mobius's lair, we are greeted with a giant Robo Scorpion. This Robo Scorpion was featured in the Old World Blues trailer, however it appears that there was a cut battle at Higgs Village between the player character and the Robo Scorpion. On this terminal we can activate an explosion that'll deal some minor damage to the Robo Scorpion, and after that we can use a couple of Big Kid mini nukes in order to finish it off. But it did take a few mini nukes, 4 to be exact, in order to finally kill the giant Robo Scorpion. But eventually we were able to deal the final blow, so we got a very beautiful finish as the Robo Scorpion blew up. It also injured our leg in the big explosion, but nothing that a few stim packs cannot heal. Now, after killing the Robo Scorpion, there is a lot of loot around here. As we enter, there's actually some healing items such as rad-X and rad-Away. They got launched to the floor there, but normally they're on the desk. Then you can actually loot the body of the giant Robo Scorpion, which has various ammo and stuff on it, like a Valence Radii Accentuator, so pretty good. And then over on the eastern part of the room, we can find this emergency shutdown terminal password, which is very useful if you're a low level fighting the giant Robo Scorpion. There's also some ammunition boxes in between the crates. Now, as we come up to the southeastern part of the room, as long as we have the upgraded sonic emitter, we can enter a lot of these rooms that have like stuff like first aid boxes, and there's also some proton throwing axes on the floor, which are very valuable, so you might as well pick them up, along with some more medical supplies, which of course are helpful. As we move over to the western part of the room, we have another staircase that we have to ascend, and inside of this room we can find, well, a whole lot of nothing, but there's some filing cabinets, some junk, and over underneath the table we can find some ammunition boxes with random ammunition and stuff. As we come outside, you'll notice that there's some turrets up here along with ammunition boxes, so loot the boxes. And if you go into the facility right here, there's actually an average lock terminal which would allow you to activate the turrets, which can aid you in your fight against the giant Robo Scorpion. There's also a footlocker and some healing items in this room as well. Now, as we move over to the next box, we can actually jump on these like scaffolding and like support beams in order to get across, or you could jump down and just go up the stairs the normal way. We have another first aid box with various healing items, lots of healing items. The game's very generous because this is, well, it's supposed to be a difficult boss fight. And then we have the emergency shutdown terminal, which is normally a very hard lock. However, with the password that we found earlier over by those protectrons, we can easily get into the computer and then shut down the Robo Scorpion, which makes everything a lot easier. But it's not nearly as cool as using mini nukes to kill the Robo Scorpion. Now, inside of the next area, we can find some footlockers that contain random ammunition. That's always a welcome sight. And then we can find the entrance to Dr. Mobius's dome. But on this table, we can find an audio sample for Mobius's Robo Scorpions, which can be used to upgrade or change the frequency of the sonic emitter. Back at the sink, if we go to Blind Diode Jefferson, we can recalibrate the sonic emitter for Robo Scorpion. This is probably the best upgrade for fighting Robo Scorpions, so I went ahead and upgraded it because, well, why not? It's the last possible upgrade you can get in this DLC. Now, as we come into Dr. Mobius's dome, well, you'll notice that Dr. Mobius maybe isn't the evil figure that the think tank made him out to be. Before talking to Mobius, if we go over to the left here, we can find Dr. Mobius's glove, along with some pre-war books, 4 to be exact. Then over on the right side, we can find a chest containing Dr. Mobius's scrubs, a unique apparel item. And after that, we can engage in conversation with Dr. Mobius. And despite being built up the entire DLC as being this kind of 1950s supervillain, we actually find out that Dr. Mobius, well, his intentions are, well, somewhat well-founded. He actually wants to prevent the think tank from escaping Big MT because he fears that they would conduct cruel experiments on people outside of Big MT. So at least within the Big MT, his quote-unquote friends are well contained, and they can conduct experiments without harming too many people from the outside. Of course, a lot of unfortunate souls from the pre-war era and, well, the post-war era did find themselves in Big MT and found themselves being experimented on and all kinds of other crazy shenanigans. Throughout conversation with Dr. Mobius, you'll notice several references, such as The Wizard of Oz, a spiritual song, Dim Bones, and Plan 9 from Outer Space, for example.
I suspect I have Plan 9s in place, but I may have coded myself to forget them, just in case. Probably.
However, the Plan 9 Easter egg is only available if you have the Wild Wasteland perk, which I do. I think it's probably the best perk in the game, so if you're not playing with it, then I feel bad for you. But besides that, there's another reference, and perhaps my most favorite reference that Dr. Mobius makes, is when you say goodbye through a peaceful ending, he says, "Please mind the equations on the floor." This is a nod to the Greek scientist and engineer Archimedes, who was killed by a Roman legionary during the Second Punic War because he angrily shouted to the legionary, who unintentionally stepped over his mathematical writings on the ground, "Do not disturb my circles." Or at least, this is what is reported in ancient history texts. But nonetheless, very, very funny.
Goodbye. Please mind the equations on the floor.
So if you choose the peaceful ending with Mobius, which I did because I don't want to kill him or the think tank, you will then have to negotiate with your brain. Well, you have to do this no matter what route you take, but your brain is kind of a dick and has kind of developed his own personality since he was taken out of your head. But through some negotiation, we can eventually convince our brain to rejoin us in a pretty epic dialogue by your brain.
Right. Look out, think tank! This brain is coming out of its jaw!
Of course, you do not have to choose to reunite with your brain. You can choose to keep living separate lives if you so wish. Now, there are pros and cons to both decisions, but for the best ending, I decided to go ahead and take back all of my body parts. So after I negotiate with my brain successfully, we will head all the way back to the think tank for a final confrontation with Dr. Klein. But before we do that, we will go to the sync auto dock in order to reinstall all of our body parts, including our heart, our spine, and our brain, into our body. Again, there's pros and cons for having them or not having them. It's entirely up to you, but for purely the purpose of story, I decided to take all of my body parts back. Man, that is a really weird sentence to say, but yes, Old World Blues, well, you gotta love it. And after that, we will head to the think tank for our final confrontation with Dr. Klein. Now, if you have befriended at least 3 out of the 4 other doctors, which will lead to a majority supporting you, you can end this peacefully. However, if you don't have enough support, this can only end in violence. But I decided to befriend all of the doctors because you get a pretty epic and sometimes funny and awesome final dialogue where the doctors decide to vouch for you against Dr. Klein and they insult Dr. Klein, and it's really amusing, really entertaining. I have to say the dialogue in Old World Blues is so freaking awesome and very entertaining. It's very well written, and even though these dialogues sometimes last 20-30 minutes, I thoroughly enjoyed listening and watching them as all of these conversations played out in front of me.
This lobotomite is much like us. Regarding even animals and pets as nothing more than avenues to promote science. There is good here.
And eventually, after a lot of dialogue, and of course the other doctors supporting you, you can end this peacefully, saying that the think tank will now work for you, and this is considered the best ending of Old World Blues. The think tank stays in the Big MT, the think tank continues to operate, Dr. Mobius continues to operate, and there's no threat to the outside world. And with that, our job here is finished. It has been one hell of a journey. It's taken a long time, and it's a little bit sad to see the Big MT go, but it's also very exciting to return back home. There is just something about the Mojave and the surrounding area that feels like home. New Vegas is truly something special. It feels good to be back in the Mojave wasteland, and even though this series is now at over 240 episodes, we still have a few stops left on our way to explore every location within Fallout New Vegas. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. I had a ton of fun exploring Old World Blues in the Big MT. All 35 locations within the Big MT were something special, and it is a really amazing place to explore. Out of all of the DLCs, it might be my favorite, just because it requires you to explore and to discover the world, and it also requires you to have a diverse set of high-leveled skills in order to achieve the best ending possible. Without that, the peaceful ending is very hard to achieve, if not impossible. This is my first time ever actually achieving a peaceful ending for Old World Blues, and it is so freaking satisfying. In fact, the final slideshow is over 10 minutes long with the best possible ending, and I will include it in this video, but I understand if you don't want to watch 10 minutes of ending credits and stuff, of course, but if you want to see it, here it is in the video. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you have any recommendations or ideas for future videos, future locations, please post them in the comments section below. And as always, until next time.
As it had been in the years before the Great War, Big Mountain, the Big Empty, became home to one of the brightest minds of the 23rd century. The courier watched over the Big Empty for years to come, caring for it and keeping its discoveries safe until they were needed to help others. Which had always been Big Mountain's purpose. Past the laboratories and science, it had always been intended as a place to build the future of all mankind.
The Sync Central Intelligence Unit was impressed by the amount of exploration the courier had undertaken. Facilities believed lost, destroyed, or ones that had simply gotten up and walked to new locations had been rediscovered by its intrepid new master. Internally, the artificial personality debated as to whether it preferred the old management to the new, and concluded that the courier's thorough approach to research and investigation was admirable and worthy of its respect.
Dr. Mobius continued his research undisturbed in the Forbidden Zone. As much as he had attempted to create better scorpions, he tried the same with humanity, with considerably less success. These failures didn't bother him overmuch. Once the rush of mentats wore off, he forgot he had failed in any event. After all, the bright young mind who had come to visit him in the Forbidden Zone had already exceeded his expectations.
The Sync atop the dome bustled with the voices of a small town, constantly chirping, arguing, and snarling at each other. Still, this all happened productively in the interests of its new owner. The Sync Central Intelligence Unit discovered, despite its inversion code, it was comforted by the sense of community the other personalities gave it.
The biological research station, obsessed with seeding everything in sight, requested a transfer to the X-22 Botanical Garden, so that it might, in its own words, sensually fertilize the garden's smooth contours. The garden sent back a polite refusal, saying it had prior commitments with a vault it had helped infect before the war.
The book chute continued to devour all seditious materials until it nearly choked on a paperclip. It adamantly maintained it was a Chinese paperclip, and the whole thing had been an elaborately orchestrated assassination attempt. Whatever the reason, it slowed down for a while, carefully appraising each document and clipboard that came to it.
The light switches continued to bicker and flicker.
This persisted until the day someone dropped a flashlight in the sink, and the two of them united in their hatred of the showboat. One of them eventually transferred to the Lightwave Dynamics plant and began a long, unrequited affair with one of the holograms.
The sink continued to ruthlessly scrub any particulate matter that came near it. Eventually, it gained access to the magnetohydraulics plant and nearly flooded all the big empty in an attempt to scrub the crater clean. Once it learned of the innovative toxins plant, however, it gained new purpose. It sought to develop antitoxins to flush into its drains and counteract the poisons bleeding into the soil.
The toaster continued its psychotic spree, reducing all appliances in range to scrap electronics and spare parts. After one of its more psychotic episodes, however, the other sink personalities decided enough was enough and dumped the toaster in a bathtub. Sparking and hissing, the toaster swore its enemies would rue the day when they had bread and no way to toast it.
Muggy did his best to collect coffee cups, although in his quest, he accidentally trapped himself in Higgs Village. It might have been the end for poor Muggy. Except he found it peaceful there, tidying up the kitchens of the think tank professors back when they had been flesh and bone. Well, except for Dr. O, who was an asshole for having created Muggy in the first place. Muggy left O's house deliberately dirty, punishing the dishes and cups that lived there in blind revenge for serving Dr. O.
Blind old Jefferson, with sounds the courier brought him, created a symphonic counter-frequency that saved Big Mountain from sonic invasion in 2910. If you didn't hear about it, good. It was rumored by the other personalities that he had a brief fling with the light switches. Although he forgot their names once too often and was soon left in the dark as punishment.
Autodoc, always gentle and methodical, kept sewing up the courier in all the right places when the skin split open from repeated wear and tear. The Autodoc was just glad to have purpose again. It heard its simpler brothers and sisters who got shipped to the Sierra Madre were bored out of their skulls in that toxic dead city. In time, the Autodoc found a way to deactivate the Y-17 trauma harnesses, releasing the corpses they had held prisoner for almost 200 years.
As the courier ran through the X-8 facility multiple times, the computers analyzed the test subject's movements. Rather than performing a superficial observation, they realized the subject barely knew what communism was, or even what a high school was. This confused them for a time, until the facility finally realized that its research had succeeded. So it let its cyber dogs out into the wastes to help protect small communities from physical aggression rather than communist propaganda.
The infiltration program in X-13 felt spent, having repeatedly upgraded the stealth suit until it could upgrade it no more. It felt warm, fulfilled, and a bit sluggish. It realized not long after the stealth suit had left it without so much as a note on the nightstand. So the infiltration program sent out Robo brains into the wastes, looking for its wayward technology. It eventually found Repcon HQ and set up a new research center, testing and murdering fiends who kept breaking into the facility.
The courier, organs intact, continued onwards, a little less heavy of step, but with all the organs in the right places, as they should be. After all, brains can develop a life of their own when left to their own thoughts, and the courier's brain was more clever than most.
Dr. Klein and the think tank remained alive, unaware of the world outside. They looped through their daily routine, none the wiser about the world beyond, although perhaps wiser was the wrong word. The world outside belonged to the courier, and if anyone would shape it, well, the courier had already called dibs.
There is an expression in the wasteland, old world blues.
It refers to those so obsessed with the past they can't see the present, much less the future, for what it is.
They stare into the what was, eyes like pilot lights, guttering and spent, as the realities of their world continue on around them.
Science is a long, steady progression into the future. What may seem a sudden event often isn't felt for years, even centuries to come.
In the times following the Second Battle of Hoover Dam, however, old world blues took on a new meaning.
Where once it was viewed as a form of sadness, nostalgia, it became an expression describing the potential for the future.
It can be easy to see science as evil, technology unchecked as the source of all ills, all misfortunes.
With the courier at the helm, science became a beacon for the future. There was old world blues, and new world hope. And hope ruled the day at Big Mountain.
We could say more, but the stories in the Big Empty speak for themselves. Now armed with the transportal Ponder, the courier could return to the dome at any time and crack open the secrets of the Big Empty one by one. The sink sat vigilant, waiting for its master to return, shoes covered in Mojave dust. Only one road yet remained, and it was one the courier had to walk alone.